this is going to be the walkthrough for exercise 3, the line demo class. This is a nice little sample of some of the drawing that we can do. We're going to do more with exercise 4 here shortly once we review the various shapes that Java provides for us with the graphics class. A couple of things I want to point out that we had talked to you before. Of course, we've got the window handler and the window listener to handle the exiting the application when the window is closed, rather than using the set default on close operator. I can do it this way. I'm setting the background color of the content pane to white because I think it's good to paint against. Remember that I had said there is a paint method that is called when it is time to essentially produce the image of the window on the screen. And when we do that, we want to make sure we call super.paint so that any items that we have added, buttons, text boxes, check boxes, get drawn on there first. Otherwise, if we want them on there, we'll have to write the code for them because we are overriding essentially the built-in JFrame paint method. And it's a fairly complex method. It does quite a bit of stuff. What we did here is use the graphics class object G, which I would like to refer, I like to think of as our paintbrush. I used it to call the draw line method. I provided it an X location of 20. So inside that window, it's going to come 20 pixels over. It's going to go down, it's going to go down 20 pixels over 40 pixels, and then draw a line that starts at that point and ends at 100 pixels down and 100 pixels over. Remember, when we're drawing a line, we give the starting points X, the starting point Y, and the ending point X and the ending point Y. And essentially we draw a straight line between those 2 points. Again, the draw line is just the beginning of what Java can do. And in the next exercise, in exercise 4, we'll take a look at some of the various shapes that can be drawn by the same class. That's going to be the shapes demo. And again, you're gonna watch a video on a description of the shapes and their arguments, and then I'll show an example here very shortly. One other thing I wanted to point out is let's take a look at the test line demo program. And the reason I want to take a look at this is because I want you to see something here. Instead of just having the window appear anywhere, we are actually going through the process of making the window appear in the middle of the screen. And how are we doing that? Well, notice that we have an import here that we don't usually see in the program side of things. We see this in our Windows side, but not our program side. This is going to be the Java Abstract Window Toolkit, java.awt.star. That's going to bring me in the Abstract Window Toolkit library. The reason that we're doing that is because there's something in here called toolkit.getDefaultToolkit.getScreenSize. And what that does is that actually calls the Abstract Window Toolkit and says, go ask the operating system what the default screen size, what the current screen size is. And we're going to store that in a dimension object. What a dimension object stores is 2 values. They could be X and Y, or they could be width and height. In our case, they're going to be width and height. They're going to be the width in pixels of the screen and the height in pixels of the screen. We're then going to parse out those individual values. They come back as integers by calling screenSize.width and screenSize.height, just to make our lives easier. We don't have to do this, but we can do it. We're going to go ahead and create our line demo window. We're going to call it win, and we're going to provide it with the title that the constructor calls for. We're then going to set the size of the window at 300 by 300, and we can get that information back by calling getSize. That produces back another dimension object. In this case, we're going to call it frame size. Since we're dealing with JFrames, we could call it win size, but we'll call it frame size. And essentially what we're going to do is find where to start drawing the window to place it in the center of the screen. So the first thing that we have to do, and it's actually pretty easy to do, right? How do you find the middle? How do you find where to start to put something in the middle? Well, First of all, you have to figure out how much of the screen you have left, and then 50% of that would be divided by 2. We could find the center of the screen by splitting it into 2 halves and finding where they meet. It's essentially what we're going to do here. We're going to take the size of the screen, we're going to subtract the size of the window, and divide that by 2, and that's going to give us our starting point, our starting x. And again, that's the width, so that's the across. So we're going to start here, and we're going to find where we start along the sides. So we're going to take whatever my default resolution is, and we're going to take whatever my resolution is minus whatever the width is, and divide that by 2. And that's going to give us our x starting point, which, remember, x goes horizontally, y goes vertically. So we're going to figure out where we start over here to draw the top left corner of that window. Then we're going to take the height of the screen, and we're going to subtract it by the height of the frame, which is 300, and we're going to divide that by 2. And that's going to tell us where along the y-axis we're going to start drawing. And that point becomes the location of the top left corner of our window. And we do that through the set location method. The set location method allows us to provide an x and y location for a component or a window and say, you start here. Once we decide where the window is going to go, once we decide where that window is going to be positioned, we can go ahead and make it visible. If you wish to make a window centered, you're going to follow this very same process every time, and this may come in handy during your homework. If you have any questions about exercise 3, you can let me know. Send me an email. I would also recommend perhaps that you gather all of those things together, and at the end of the class, send me an email with all of your questions, and I'll try to address them and post them up for the rest of the students to see, because obviously if you have a question, I'm sure somebody else does too. So feel free to ask. Again, if you click the next button, you'll move on to the lecture that'll discuss the different shapes that Java can draw for you.